What is the most fun tier in World of Tanks Blitz? This is a question that a lot of people ask me, and it's one that I actually have a pretty solid answer to. It's not tier 10, I can tell you that for a fact, at least for me. For people that don't care about their statistics, tier 10 is a great tier. It is the most competitive in the game. It's where you can use the top of the branch on tanks that you've played, and because of that, it can be very fun. And I like tier 10. The problem is, as a competitive player who does care about my statistics, it's sometimes a little hard for me to enjoy the tier if my teams are very bad or I'm underperforming, because then I'm going to focus more on my stats and how I'm doing in said tank versus the actual capabilities and fun in that tier. And it can be a bit, contradicting sometimes. I do like the tier. Tier 10 is definitely my most played. I mean, we're on my main account right now, and if we go to my stats page, we can see that I played 41,000 games in tier 10, which is double the next highest tier, which is 8 at 20,000. So definitely the most games played. But while that's the case, I can tell you that I've not had the most fun while playing in tier 10. Then we arrive to tier 9, which is personally my favorite tier in the game. Mainly down to the fact that Tier 9 not only has some incredibly unique vehicles, but they are also designed in a way that they can absolutely bully Tier 8 and still go confidently up against Tier 10s. And that's what I love about Tier 9. A lot of people say, oh, I hate getting up tiered, but I actually don't mind it because most of the Tier 9s that are solid don't have issues going up against higher tiered opponents. I mean, even some of the worst Tier 9s that you can look at. You know, most people hate the IS-8, for example. They say the vehicle doesn't have very good armor and that its gun depression is poor. But personally, I think the IS-8's an absolute bop. I was playing it the other day and had a super fun time. I've played 47 battles in the vehicle, 86% win rate, with 3,000 average damage. I mean, the tank has 2,600 DPM. Not only that, but really good heat pen, solid accuracy, and great mobility. And because of that, when you're fighting tier 8s, you're just a beast. And when you're fighting tier 10s, you're still pretty strong because you have more DPM than most heavies, more accuracy and pen. It's a super fun, solid heavy. And these are the things that I absolutely love about tier 9. But the one thing I don't love about Tier 9 is that it still is a competitive tier. You are going up against Tier 10s, and sometimes you don't want to go up against Tier 10s every single battle you're playing if you get a bad matchmaker. Because at the end of the day, as good as you are in a Tier 9, you're obviously not going to make as big of an impact as your Tier 10s if they suck. That's just a fact. And you have that happen a lot of times. So you can have a lot of fun in Tier 9, which I do, but at the same time, it's not, I would say, the most fun tier for me. Then we arrive to Tier 8. Now, Tier 8 has a lot of different and unique vehicles. You've got, the KV-5, which is this big hongler bongler, and then you arrive to, like, the IS-3 Defender, which is the first autoloader that was ever added into Blitz. Well, at least in high tiers. So there's a lot of interesting vehicles, IS-2SH. I like Tier 8 a lot. I think, overall, Tier 8 is the most balanced, yet capable tier in the game. Tier 8 doesn't have to deal with tier 7s that much in a way that they're scary. Like, yeah, the Smasher's a scary tank, but I'm not that worried about it when I'm in a tier 8, let alone a tier 7. And tier 9s, yeah, they're dangerous, but usually in tier 8, you're only fighting like 3 tier 9s at max. It's not that big of a deal, and most tier 8s are pretty good in dealing with tier 9s, especially after the calibrated shells buffs. I mean, most heat-firing heavies now have enough pen to butter through tier 9s, like 281 mils of heat pen on a T77 makes a tier 9 look like nothing. And because of that, it's really down to what tier 8 you play. Some tier 8s are going to be rather mediocre, but others are going to be fantastic. Like the Tiger 2, it is still one of the best tier 8s in the game. It has great levels of penetration, 299 on the APCR. The vehicle is mobile, it has great DPM. It is one of the best heavies in the game. And because of that, it's just a fantastic vehicle. So tier 8, it's super fun. There's so many different great vehicles. It's never a tier that I get mad when I lose in. But believe it or not, my overall most fun tier to play in is tier 7. And the reason why is very simple. Tier 7 is the ultimate I do not care about anything tier. Tier 8, I still try to do good in because I feel like tier 8 is where tier 8, 9, and 10 are the 3 high tiers of Blitz. They are the tiers where I'm like, okay, I'm going to try and do good. I'm going to try and deal decent damage. I don't really care if I lose that much in tier 8, but, if I'm losing a lot of games, I'm going to get a little sad. However, in Tier 7, I do not care how I do. Tier 7 is the ultimate I'm going to have fun tier, and it has by far the most fun and engaging takes in the game. The Aufklärungs Panzer Panther, which Wargaming gave away for free, is one of my favorite Tier 7s out there. The vehicle features a crazy top speed. I'm averaging over 3,000 in it. It's basically like a super rammer. It's incredibly fun. And then you arrive to other vehicles like the Steyr Waffenträger, which feature a 3-shell autoloader with crazy good accuracy, great levels of penetration. It's a super fun tank, very unique, and entirely different to other Tier 7s. Wargaming just released the A46, which is a Hess-firing little Beetle Bugler, and it's one of my favorite little tanks in Tier 7 right now, just because of the capabilities it features. And the list goes on and on. The M41D is a bop, and the T-34-1. Heck, I was playing the AMX-13 M24 yesterday for a live stream, and that tank's a beast too. Most of the Tier 7s are really solid. And yeah, there are some outliers, like I'm not going to be playing the 45 TP or the Skoda T45 anytime soon, but it doesn't take away from the fact that most of the Tier 7s are really fun. I love the Mutant. I purchased the Endurance just the other day. It's a super fun vehicle. There's a lot of very engaging tanks in the tier that I find an absolute bop to play. And because Tier 7 is kind of away from the rest of the tiers, it's more of a fantasy tier, it means that I just don't have to care about my stats. I can have fun, I can mess around, and I can bully people too, because in Tier 7, yeah, you're fighting Tier 8s, but usually most Tier 7s are quite capable against higher tiers, and they absolutely smash on lower tiers. I mean, look at the Silencer, for example. This tank has crazy pen, 285 on the heat, and not only that, it's got a double shot gun, which deals 620 damage in a matter of 2.5 seconds. I mean, that's crazy. If this thing was a Tier 8, it would be super strong, let alone a Tier 7. And, yeah, I mean, Tier 7 definitely has the most OP tanks, but it's not a problem because there's a lot of really good tanks in Tier 7. I mean, you can say the Silencer is OP, but then you can pull out a Black Prince with 3,000 damage per minute, and not only that, but have all these special consumables and have crazy good armor on this tank and sandbags and all these other capabilities. All these tanks are super fun to mess around with. So at the end of the day, Tier 7 for me is the most fun tier. Tier 6 is alright. The problem with Tier 6 is that you have to fight Tier 7s. And while Tier 6 is decent, it just can't fight Tier 7s reliably. They have so much more everything. Even as a good player, in most Tier 6s, when you're up against a Smasher or an Annihilator, I mean, what do, bruh? You shoot it for like 160, and then if it just hits you back one time, you're down like 2/3 of your health. So, yeah, that's really the only problem I have with Tier 6. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree or disagree on what your favorite tier in the game is. And if you enjoyed this type of content and you want to see more like it, please consider smashing that subscribe button. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.